Hello, Dr. Grande here. Today I'll be analyzing the Hulu documentary titled Fanatical, the Catfishing of Tegan and Sara. The documentary is about a musical duo named Tegan and Sara Quinn, who were very popular in the LGBT community. Tegan was the victim of a catfishing scheme that went on for years. First I'll look at the background, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Tegan and Sara Quinn were born on September 19, 1980, and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. They are identical twin sisters. When the sisters were 14 years old, they started writing songs and conducting musical performances. In 1997, they used a studio in their school to record demo albums. In 1998, they won some type of music competition in Calgary, which gave them access to a better studio. They recorded a professional demo and started to gain attention. They opened for the musician Hayden in May of that year. I don't know who that is, but I guess he's kind of popular. In 1999, the duo released their debut album. They signed with Vapor Records in 2000. This label was owned by Neil Young. This is a musician I do recognize. The sisters continued releasing albums. They attracted a lot of attention from the LGBT community because they are gay, and they discussed their sexual orientation frequently and openly. Connecting with fans was an important part of their on-stage performances. They often talked about politics, their time on tour, and their childhood experiences. In 2004, Tegan and Sara had their first big break after releasing their fourth album. This is when they kind of caught on. They started accumulating fans at an increased rate. Over the next few years, Tegan and Sara continued to grow in popularity. In 2022, they released their 10th studio album. Tegan and Sara obtained a decent level of success as musicians. The appeal they had was primarily centered on young women who were members of the LGBT community, which may seem like a relatively small group to drive a musical act. However, their fans were particularly active and engaged. Many fans were described as diehard, and they really connected to the personal stories that Tegan and Sara shared. They felt like they knew who the sisters were, and they were highly interested in the personal details of the sisters' lives. This personal connection allowed the duo to sell a lot of merchandise and attracted repeat visitors to their concerts. So a good portion of the revenue was driven by the same people coming back over and over. Understanding the importance of having contact with the fans, Tegan and Sara communicated with them in many ways, including over the internet and by hanging out after shows and talking. Sometimes they would do this for hours, just having conversations with people who came to the concerts. Remaining accessible was an important part of their brand. Unfortunately, for Tegan and Sara, this accessibility came with a cost. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. In 2008, a fan of the musical duo, Tegan and Sara, named Julie, connected with a person on Facebook who claimed to be Tegan Quinn. In reality, this person was not Tegan Quinn. Tegan did not have any idea who this person was or what they were doing. I will refer to the impersonator as fake Tegan just to keep things straight. In the documentary, they combined fake and Tegan to come up with the word Fegan. I will not be using that. I'm also going to run under the assumption that fake Tegan was female, but of course the sex of this individual is not known. It could have been a male. Fake Tegan communicated with Julie frequently, and they formed a friendship. Julie was convinced that she was speaking to the real Tegan because fake Tegan had inside knowledge. For example, fake Tegan sent Julie a demo recording, which was not something that Tegan and Sara had released. And fake Tegan knew that Tegan's mother had breast cancer. This information had not yet been made public. In 2011, after fake Tegan and Julie had been communicating for 3 years, fake Tegan gave Julie access to a folder containing passport photographs. Photographs of Tegan and Sara were included in these files. Julie started to wonder what was going on because this seemed like a bizarre move. Why would the real Tegan do this? What would be the point of sharing these images? Julie communicated with a friend who was connected to a manager of Tegan and Sara. The manager informed Julie that Tegan did not know who she was. This must have been pretty disappointing for Julie. This is when everybody realized there was an impersonator on the loose. In response to discovering the catfishing scheme, Tegan and Sara made an announcement on social media telling their fans that they do not communicate over email. After viewing this announcement, many fans came forward and reported stories about interacting with fake Tegan. Thousands of emails had been sent to different fans over the course of years. Fake Tegan was highly industrious and apparently didn't have a lot else to do. The Hulu documentary reviewed some of the characteristics of fake Tegan's communications with fans so one could get an idea of the general style of the impersonator. Fake Tegan tended to engage in frequent communication, sometimes every day. There were not many long conversations. Rather, there were a lot of messages that would be the length of a typical text message. So this wasn't deep conversation. It was at a shallow level most of the time. Fake Tegan was careful to avoid an obvious mistake that would indicate that she was not the real Tegan. She knew where the real Tegan was located at any given time and never communicated when the real Tegan would be busy. For example, fake Tegan did not send messages while the real Tegan was on stage performing. In many of the conversations that fake Tegan had, she became flirtatious and was seeking some type of romantic relationship. There was quite a bit of communication about sex. Many of the victims felt special because they believed Tegan was communicating exclusively with them or with just a few people. Therefore, they tended to keep this relationship a secret from others. They did not want to advertise this special connection. This worked to fake Tegan's advantage. It helped her perpetrate the scam without being detected. Over time, fake Tegan would become unkind and ill-tempered. So eventually, she became grumpy and the relationships would end. Tegan and Sara hired a cybersecurity expert and eventually realized that someone must have hacked into an online file hosting service. This is how they gained the inside information, like the demo recording and the passport photographs. They desperately tried to identify fake Tegan. This led to a lot of dead ends, and the perpetrator was never found. The sisters attempted to address the impersonation by sending out cease and desist letters and revising how they communicated with fans. For instance, they switched to a VIP access system. All these VIPs had their identities known, so they were safer to interact with in that sense. This aggravated a number of regular fans who felt like the sisters were becoming closed off. They were too important to talk to them anymore. At this point, the documentary becomes a bit aimless. I'm not sure what the producers were really doing here. It's like they ran out of story, so they just wandered around a bit. They chased a bunch of leads that turned out to be meaningless. This whole part of the documentary could have been cut out or greatly abbreviated. For example, there was a woman named JT who had been friends with Tegan in real life. JT was also a victim of fake Tegan and became angry at the real Tegan based on what happened. Similarly, there was a woman referred to as Tara. Her real identity is never released in the documentary. Tegan and the producer of the documentary, Erin Lynn Carr, initially believed that Tara may be fake Tegan, but after speaking with her on the phone, they changed their minds. They thought that Tara was probably just another victim of the catfishing scheme. So fake Tegan had a really good way of making victims look like they might be the perpetrators. It was a pretty clever scam in that sense. The documentary ends in kind of an anticlimactic fashion. There is no resolution. Fake Tegan remains unknown. Her identity may never be discovered. There was a caption at the end of the documentary indicating there was a good lead in the UK. So maybe the fake Tegan lives in Britain. The overall theme of the documentary is how easy it is to be a victim of a catfishing scheme. These impersonators are very convincing, and their victims are more susceptible to being manipulated because they desperately want a relationship with a famous person. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. What do I think of Tegan and Sara as far as their level of musical talent and how they designed their musical empire? This is an interesting case as far as a musical group because technically speaking, Tegan and Sara do not have a tremendous amount of singing talent. This is, of course, subjective. It's just my opinion. Some people may feel differently. I don't think they're terrible or anything, But without the personal connection piece, like the connections they make with their fans, I don't know how they would have achieved success. There are a lot of singers out there with more talent who have only achieved a fraction of their success. Now, to be fair, the music industry is capricious. Sometimes people rise up when they should not, and on other occasions, people who deserve to be famous never make it. So part of this could just be luck. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. As far as the duo's vocal qualities, one can make a decent argument that both of them lack power and range. Their singing falls in a narrow band. They're not really versatile. They use straightforward and simple harmonies. I wouldn't describe them as complex or layered. The lyrics they use are formulaic, not at all complex. Also, the lyrics are repetitive, have no poetic flair whatsoever, and cover a limited range of topics. There are three central themes in their music. Emotional intimacy. This is fairly common among many musical artists, like they talk about the excitement of finding a new love. The theme of being gay. This is something the duo really emphasizes and promotes as part of their brand. This is a critical part of their success. And mental health struggles. This helps them connect to a larger audience because a lot of people have mental health symptoms. It's easy to identify with the sisters in this way. As far as the strengths of Tegan and Sara, they have quite a few. They tend to deliver an emotional performance which is both consistent and relatable. It's kind of like the same thing every time, but that's not always a bad thing. I think it's comforting to their fans, and they appear to be stable. They have a steady message which they have promoted for many years. Their performances tend to be raw and delivered from a first-person experience. They share their internal dialogue with the audience and maintain a conversational tone. I think their success is really about connecting with people who share their sexual orientation or who otherwise appreciate the challenges faced by members of the LGBT community. What they lack in musical talent, they partially make up in promoting a heartfelt message to a targeted audience. This brings me to item number 2. The secret weapon possessed by Tegan and Sara was the strong connection with fans and the willingness to engage with them in a vulnerable and compassionate way. The sisters really seemed like regular people, people who had different struggles and were open to talking about those struggles with others. Their fans looked at them and saw individuals who shared their experiences. It's like Tegan and Sara understood them in a way that no other musicians ever have, or that no other musicians ever tried to. Accessibility was the key. Tegan and Sara were not the type of performers who would be well served by hiding from their fans. This style had drawbacks even separate from the fake Tegan incident. In the documentary, the real Tegan mentioned some scary incidents during onstage performances. So there were fans who were violating boundaries which had nothing to do with fake Tegan. Eventually, Tegan appreciated the value of having security personnel. As fame increases, heavily depending on security becomes inevitable. The strategy that Tegan and Sara used initially was not scalable to high levels of fame, or whatever the sisters have achieved. I guess this is debatable, but they do seem pretty popular. The problem with being so dependent on the personal connection component is this. Some fans will take things too far. Some will demand complete access and get offended if they are rejected. They will get offended even if they think they're rejected. Now moving to item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Tegan and Sara made it their business to form close connections with fans. This is understandable given their marketing strategy, but it led to some unexpected consequences. Unexpected from their perspective. Really, they should have predicted this, but either way. Fake Tegan was probably someone who had a very high level of interest in the musical duo, specifically in Tegan. A lot of the energy was focused on Tegan. Fake Tegan took this personal connection element to heart. She really viewed Tegan as an artist who could somehow maintain personal relationships with thousands of different fans. This isn't realistic, of course, but this is what fake Tegan believed. So, in one way, she viewed real Tegan as some type of superhero, a person with incredible powers. Fake Tegan was self-centered, impulsive, vindictive, petty, manipulative, had a sense of entitlement, and of course, was exceedingly creepy. It's also possible she had pronounced borderline personality traits. She did not appear to be a big fan of abandonment. She was emotionally unstable, and she struggled with identity issues. At some point, fake Tegan was rejected, or perceived that she was rejected by the real Tegan. Maybe she reached out to the real Tegan and never heard back. There's no way to know what happened, but something must have happened. There was a trigger to this. Fake Tegan wanted to strike back at the real Tegan, but also was still attracted to the idea of having a relationship with a person who was powerful, at least possessing the kind of power that fame brings. This led to the catfishing scheme. It allowed fake Tegan to achieve both of her goals. She could get revenge on the real Tegan, and she could have a power differential relationship. The only difference, of course, is that now fake Tegan was playing the role of the person with the power. She was pretending to be a famous musician. Fake Tegan could not have a relationship with a celebrity, so the next best thing was to become a celebrity. She transformed into this version of Tegan. As far as the fans who were manipulated, I think most of them were excited about attracting the attention of this famous musician. They didn't question the relationship because they needed to believe it was real. Now moving to my final thoughts. One of the things about the documentary that's important, in my opinion, is how some fake Tegan victims were mad at the real Tegan. This highlights the need for people to put a face to their anger. Nobody knew who the fake Tegan was, so nothing could be done to that person, but everyone knew who the real Tegan was. Even though people realized that fake Tegan was a different person, they were still not able or willing to separate the impersonator completely from the musician. Some of this is because the dream and the hope that fake Tegan inspired died very slowly. The process of realizing what was really going on was gradual. It wasn't like people heard that they were being manipulated by a fake Tegan and immediately believed that was the case. Maybe for some. But for the remaining fans, the remaining victims, they realized this slowly. The fake Tegan, who they believed, of course, was the real Tegan, was incredibly important to them. They didn't want to give it up. They held on to the dream that it must be real. So again, the hope died slowly. It just wasn't dropped instantly. People were not willing to let go of that special relationship. Maybe a part of it was real, right? They just started rationalizing. Maybe a part of this really happened. Okay, maybe there was a fake Tegan, but I wasn't talking to the fake Tegan. So there's all kinds of ways to rationalize. And this is extremely destructive. I think this is what caused people to get mad at the real Tegan. It was holding on to something that wasn't true. The lesson in this case is straightforward. There is never a good time to give up one's critical thinking skills. If a person is having a relationship with a famous musician or any celebrity, which has never been confirmed in person, then it might just be too good to be true. Those are my thoughts in the case of the Hulu documentary about Tegan and Sara. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.